Hey guys, welcome to Solo ReacTalk. Today I'm going to be reacting to Legacy of Kain, a character study by Strictly Fantasy. Last week, Friday, I reacted to another video from Strictly Fantasy called Legacy of Kain, Soul Reaver, a Timeline. Yes, it was complicated for me. They were messing with time. The characters, Raziel, Kain, they were using a weapon called the Soul Reaver, and they were messing with time, trying to fix timelines, trying to change timelines, but evidently they couldn't really change anything because everything that they've done was meant to happen. So don't play around with time, guys. That's what I've learned from that video, is that it's complicated. You create paradoxes and it just creates a lot of confusion and mess. Especially for me, because I was lost most of the time. But now we're focusing on Legacy of Kain, a character study, and I think the planet they come from is called Nosgoth. I hope I'm pronouncing it correctly. And there's some other characters like Mobis, Vordar, Orden, and of course Raziel the Wraith. Yeah. Those are the only names that I wrote that seem to be important from the previous video. So yeah, let's continue. 3, 2, 1, go.
Revenge is motivation enough. At least it's honest. Hate me, but do it honestly.
The Legacy of Kain Soul Reaver series is a triumph of storytelling. Set in a dying and decadent world, it's easy to be enchanted by its rich characters, intricate plots, and complex themes of martyrdom, madness, free will, and the repercussions of time travel. Though, nothing quite prepares you for its magnificent dialogue, which alone is capable of standing next to the likes of classic Shakespearean tragedies, such as Julius Caesar and Hamlet. Our story begins in Blood Omen, where we follow the title character Kain, a driven, yet directionless noble, whose petty ambitions pale in comparison to the momentous destiny before him. While on the road, Kain is ambushed.
So Kain was human before he became that vampiric creature with 3 fingers. Like, everybody has 3 fingers. That's what I've also realized, is that the wraiths and the vampires, they all have these only 3 fingers hands. It's quite interesting. I don't know about the other characters, if they had something similar to that.
By a group of bandits, who murders and impales the young nobleman. Desperate and thirsty for vengeance, Kain is offered a second chance at life by the necromancer Mortanius. Acting somewhat recklessly, Kain accepts the necromancer's offer, only to find himself reborn as a vampire. Now inflicted with an insatiable blood curse, Kain hunts down and easily dispatches his murderers. Convinced his quest is over, Kain is soon told otherwise by Mortanius, who states that those fools were merely the instruments of his murder, not the cause.
Okay, so Mortanius is a necromancer. He's not a vampire that transformed Kain into a vampire. Alright. So is Mortanius like the old father of, or should I say like the old creator of vampires? Like, there is no original vampire that creates other vampires. It's just this necromancer who conjures them up into existence.
Intrigued by the necromancer's words and eager to find a cure for his vampirism, Kain sets off for the Pillars of Nosgoth. There he learns from the spectre of the former Balance Guardian Ariel that there is no cure for death, only release. Ariel instructs Kain to scourge the Circle of 9, who are each tied to their respective pillars. The pillars are the embodiment of the divine force that preserves the life of the world. As long as the Guardians remain pure and uncorrupted, the world too shall remain healthy and pristine. However, each of the Guardians have been driven to insanity, and are the reason why the land has become diseased. As long as they live, all of Nosgoth is doomed to an eternity of decay. Unconcerned for the fate of the world, Kain nevertheless accepts the role of executioner. He slaughters each of the Guardians one by one, including the devious Time Guardian Mobius, and eventually acquires the legendary Soul Reaver blade. Thus he restores the Pillars until finally coming face to face with Mortanius, who is in fact one of the 9, the Guardian of Death. Mortanius reveals that it was the Necromancer himself who had orchestrated Kain's death, and had set off the chain of events that would lead to the destruction of the Circle. Before meeting his own end at Kain's hands, Mortanius ominously warns the young princeling that there is one more life he must take. And so, we come to the moment which would shape the course of the past, present and future for not only Kain, but all of Nosgoth. 8 pillars had been restored, leaving just one left, the Pillar of Balance, belonging to Ariel's successor, born at the moment of her death, who in the past 30 years of his petty life had been wholly ignorant of his true role. Yes, as Balance Guardian, Kain is the last surviving member of the Circle. Ariel presents him with a
Kain? Kain is the one? Okay. Wow.
fateful decision. Sacrifice himself to redeem Nosgoth, or refuse the sacrifice to preserve his own life at the cost of the whole world. At his whim, the world will be healed or damned. At his whim. Disgusted by all the lies and machinations, Kain selfishly refuses the sacrifice, embracing his vampirism for the first time.
But like honestly, who would want to kill themselves? I know what strictly fantasy is saying, you know, if he doesn't kill himself, the world will plunge into darkness and chaos and death. But I mean, would you truly believe that with your death, peace will reign?
Triggers the collapse of the pillars. He establishes his throne on the ruins of the corrupted Pillar of Balance, becoming Nosgoth's self-proclaimed monarch. He would later go on to plunge the tomb of the Seraphan and raise 6 ancient corpses to serve as his vampire lieutenants: Raziel, Turel, Duma, Rahab, Zephon, and Malchiah.
Okay, so creating vampires doesn't require, the vampire to suck the blood of a particular individual and that person becomes a vampire. Creating vampires in this game only requires dead bodies, and then you're proficient in necromancy probably, and then you just raise whoever you want from the dead and they become vampires. Interesting. So how do they sustain themselves? Do they eat normal food, or do they, suck human blood? But I don't know. I'm just finding it interesting how these vampires came into being. It's quite interesting.
Who in turn would raise vampire clans of their own, giving rise to an army of fledglings, capable of conquering the world in earnest. 5 centuries pass between the events of Blood Omen and the second game in the series, Soul Reaver, during which time Kain becomes less and less human. As narrated by Raziel, the series' new protagonist, Kain would enter the state of change and emerge with a new-found power. His flesh would twist and morph, with a crown now adorning his head and hard lines and scars tracing his body. Some time following Kain, his lieutenants too would emerge with gifts of their own, until Raziel, the prodigal firstborn son, surpasses Kain by growing a set of bat-like wings. After Raziel faithfully served his master for over 1,000 years, Kain violently tears off Raziel's wings and discards him into the abyss on what is believed to be a jealous whim. Raziel would eventually return from the abyss centuries later, hell-bent on revenge against his former master and brethren who betrayed and destroyed him. He emerges into the corpse of Nosgoth, learning that his clan had been completely decimated by Kain, and finds the tyrant waiting on his throne at the very heart of the pillars he destroyed. It is during this confrontation, when Raziel challenges Kain over the massacre of his clan, that we get our first inkling that not is all as it seems, that perhaps Kain isn't simply the selfish king clinging to his seat of power, that just maybe there is more to Kain's motivations than pure spite, jealousy, and ambition.
Conscience? You dare to speak to me of conscience? Only when you have felt the full gravity of choice should you dare question my judgment. Your lifespan is a flicker compared to the mass of doubt and regret that I have borne since Mortanius first turned me from the light. To know that the fate of the world hangs dependent on the advisedness of my every deed? Can you even begin to conceive what action you would take in my position?
In the world of Nosgoth, integrity, servitude, and faithfulness are not rewarded in kind. We are shown, time and time again, good intentions lead only to manipulation by predators striving to use such naive and gullible pawns for their own ends. In his youth, Kain fell victim to such deceit, and he has since learned from his experiences. His selfishness and acting in his own interests have served him well, while thwarting the agendas of many factions who would seek to rule Nosgoth for themselves. In Soul Reaver 2, the history of Nosgoth is flipped on its head. Upon arriving in Nosgoth's distant past, Kain starts to unravel the intricate conspiracy that led to the world's destruction, which he eloquently puts to Raziel.
At the moment of my first cry, Ariel's beloved, the guardian Nutraptor, finds her corpse. Racked with grief and tormented by suspicions of treachery, Nutraptor plunges into a madness which overflows and infects all of the Guardians who are symbiotically bound, including me. The repercussions of Ariel's assassination were expertly calculated. The entire circle descends into madness, and I am tainted at the moment of my birth, instantly rendered incapable of fulfilling the role destiny has prepared for me.
Kain gives subtle hints regarding the guardianship of the Pillars. The Pillars were never intended to be served by human guardians, but belonged to the vampires. However, as the only surviving vampire left in Nosgoth, selflessly choosing to sacrifice himself at that crucial moment would have meant the complete annihilation of Kain's race. The Time Guardian, Mobius, made sure of that. Kain's entire existence is encapsulated by an impossible choice. He metaphorically compares his dilemma at the Pillars to the fall of a two-sided coin. If the coin lands one way, the world is saved at the cost of his entire species, with new human guardians for the Pillars susceptible to further manipulation. If the coin lands on the reverse, Kain lives on to raise a new generation of vampire spawn, but the world is forever left dying and diseased. Either way, the game is rigged. However, we come to know what Kain seeks is a third option, a way out of the dilemma thrusted upon him. Only through Raziel's rebirth as a creature with free will can Kain further his goals to change history and reclaim his
Okay, now I know why he wears that cloth. Oh gosh.
intended destiny.
You said it yourself, Kain. There are only two sides to your coin. Apparently so. But suppose you throw a coin enough times. Suppose one day it lands on its edge.
This edge of the coin is Kain's gambit against the artificial fate devised for him. Now looking back to when Kain cast Raziel into the abyss, I cannot help but reconsider the pained look on his face. This isn't an expression of spite, anger, or even jealousy, but a face of doubt and anguish. This was a painful but necessary act to deal one last hand to play against fate. At its heart, the Legacy of Kain series is about causality and free will. The series constantly pits the protagonists against authoritarian figures who remind them of their impotence in the face of inevitability. It makes us question whether free will is only an illusion. Are we all just pawns to history, following a predetermined path because we are compelled to, because we are always meant to meet this particular person? or play this particular role? Or are we free to choose our own fates for ourselves? Having been wronged dozens of times, Kain struggles to answer this question by striving to escape manipulation, engendering his desire to conquer all of Nosgoth for his own. Although we might never get a conclusion to the series, I like to think Kain succeeded in his goal to return the pillars to their rightful inheritors and ensure Nosgoth's restoration to its former glory. Perhaps one day, someone will continue the story as was intended in the unfinished Dark Prophecy game. Until then, we can only contemplate and wonder, what if?
Okay guys, that's it with The Legacy of Kain, a character study by Strictly Fantasy. Yes, this was very helpful. Compared to the Soul Reaver a timeline video, this one was very helpful in terms of this character, Kain. Very interesting that he would have become the successor to the Pillar of Balance. And I'm wondering who killed Ariel? Who started all of this cascading plan of destruction that Kain would be, centered in? Was it Mortanius, or was it someone else, or was it Mobius himself? I'm not sure. But whoever assassinated Ariel started this entire commotion, or should I say this entire calamity. And yeah, look, I understand that Kain had a choice. He had choices and he made his choice, and probably to him, he probably thought this was the only way for him to change time, by creating a variable that could not be affected by time, and that would be Raziel, because he hurt him pretty badly. He cut off his jaw. I don't even know how is he talking, but he cut off his jaw. He killed his clan. He made him this monster that would become the very thing that would change time. I think that's how it goes. And yeah, I'm just thinking that maybe there could have been another way, to make that third option. But okay, well, we'll see if it worked out. But Strictly Fantasy said that the story hasn't concluded, so I'm not sure. But yeah, it's quite interesting to hear how Kain was first a human, and then this necromancer Martanius transformed him into a vampire, and Kain then created more vampires and created his own race of vampires. But I think maybe he should have just killed himself. Yeah, that sounds weird. But maybe he should have just killed himself and then allow humans to become the new successors to the pillars. And if they get manipulated by some third force, then so be it. For as long as Nosgoth, the planet, is existing and it has life and it continues to exist, then I guess his life would be required then, for the greater good, if I can say that. Because his race, this vampiric race, I don't know, really, I'm not sure whether it has the right to exist, because it's created out of dead human beings, right? So I'm not sure if these dead people who are now vampires should be allowed to exist. I don't know. I'm a bit conflicted with that, but it's interesting. It's interesting, Kain's decisions. And guys, I guess that's it for today. Remember, I'll be continuing on with the playlist, with Legacy of Kain. I will be continuing on with the playlist. But this one really helped me out, just to understand a bit more about Kain and Raziel. And Raziel looked very handsome until what we see now, with no jaw and just skin and bone and very thick, muscular thighs, which is weird, which is really weird. But yeah, it was interesting. It was very, very interesting. Okay guys, remember, if you liked the video, please give me a like, comment, and subscribe to my channel. Click on the notification bell if you want to be up to date with my latest videos, and I will see you next time. Okay, bye bye.